Previously on Rimworld. Where I kind of set it up, so we're using power cables in the walls. We're finally at a point where we could set up a cooler and start freezing food. Things started to take a bit of a turn here because obviously all my melee fighters were now essentially out of the fight. Sawyer started using his flame bow and everyone just started going down. And welcome back, folks. We are carrying on with our Rimworld playthrough, and today we are going to be trying to survive. So I left you guys on a little bit of a cliffhanger. The mad bison had just knocked a good portion of the remaining team out, and you know, we are doing our best to help them survive, really. At this point, you know, we've got quite a bit of sort of like damage repaired. We've managed to, well, we're holding on at this point. I think when we last finished, I'd managed to save a few people, get a few people back on their feet. But it's been a little while since played, but you can see in that clip there that the bison had just fallen asleep, so that gets rid of their rage somehow. So we started working on defenses and clearing of the flooring and the roof in the main room. I'm gonna basically relocate the main room because at the moment we're not very defensible, and we will start to think about kind of different types of walls. But we once again had Spinach go a little bit nuts. And you know, the usual kind of nuts, the murderous rage nuts, which seem to be a common thing. So I tried to arrest her with, I forgot about Ranch really being Ranch and not being able to take too much in the way of damage. So I immediately got Sriracha on it to help with the kind of like taking her out for the time being. Bear in mind, she only had, like, she cannot gain melee or shooting skill. So when she fights people, she literally has no skill. But once again, she flew into a murderous rage, and it kind of got to a point where I was like, what is wrong with you? You are insane. So I had the choice to execute or the choice to banish. I was a bit of an arse and I banished. Even that, you know, didn't tend to wounds first, but you can see I had to think about it. It took some time, but I banished Spinach. It wasn't worth it. I felt that, you know, Sriracha and Ranch could hold off until, you know, someone else joined us. I felt they could defend the raids. Now we'd lost so much, the raids obviously go down ever so slightly in difficulty, and I say that very loosely. So we'll see. So I dug up the floor and I started thinking about basically growing rice. I opened up the roof. It just got to a point where it was too dangerous. And you can see their Spinach just kind of didn't make it. Obviously, we had no food. So I was kind of like, oh, why is he not cooking? And it did take a little while for me to realise that we weren't using a fuel stove anymore, we were using electric. And because we were using electric, you know, it just meant that I needed to build a backup fuel stove, which I did. And we did start replacing electricity, but I thought it would be really good to have that backup. Just because if we had the backup, if the power ever went out again, because as I've said in previous playthroughs, wind can be temperamental, then we would still have a way to cook. But you can see we were doing okay. Ranch unfortunately has gut worms. Sriracha can't do medicine, and Ranch for whatever reason cannot self-tend. But things will get better. You know, this is just Rimworld. For those of you who haven't played at home, Rimworld is torturous, and I'm not even playing on one of the more difficult settings, so there are worse things. You know, there's Randy Random, and that's always more challenging, and a lot of the mods and stuff add even more complex storytellers, like the vanilla expanded stuff. So we and as well as DLCs, so I'll have to check out some of those a little bit later. But as you see, Ranch was a melee fighter, just no good at that. So you know, we need to keep Ranch at range basically if we're going to be successful in all of this. So rescued him with Sriracha. Unfortunately, had no way of tending his wounds, but thankfully they weren't life-threatening, so we were okay. And you can see I kind of prioritized cleaning as a high priority, because the reason my guys kept breaking was just because of how disgusting everything was. For those of you that don't know, like, each spot of dirt on the floor can like take away something as like quick as much as like 16, I think it is, like, beauty, which eventually drives them insane. So it's kind of a good thing. So the nice thing about having this little trap set up was that we can now defend a little bit better against things that come to us, because the way I've separated things now, I left the door closed, which was problematic because nothing could come through it. And I also forgot I built a wall across the path, so we had these mad cats out there, but I'd set up a safety kind of home zone, and we had a place to grow rice now. So, and of course we had people popping in every now and again. Those travelers actually took care of the cats, which was pretty good for us, because at the moment you can see we were really starting to struggle for food. We had all the potato crops up the top, which we'll harvest kind of periodically throughout the playthrough, as well as obviously like heel root that's available. That was from like previous growing, as well as I've got kind of a backup supply of wood up the top, which we'll probably call in eventually. But eventually I've learnt my lesson from the ravaging fires of episode 3. We will be in a position where we'll be getting rid of, you know, the last like little bits of wood over time. It takes a little while, but we will get there. We'll take it all out. And these guys had pretty low plants, and Ranch just was not having a good time. It's quite amusing actually. You know, we kept getting raided, these guys kept coming in. We've got masterwork recurve bows, and we are struggling. So how we're gonna do later in the playthrough, when we start getting kind of mechanoid clusters, insectoids, things like that, I don't know. But these guys are getting a better shot. You know, they started taking care of things very quickly, very easily. And you know, we even tried to capture this friendly guy. I mean, he doesn't survive, but we tried. That's the important thing, because Ranch can do medical. We even had this wonderful mad tortoise that kind of jumped out at us, was kind of ready to go. And you know, but you know, Ranch tried, but I believe, if I remember correctly, he got an infection. I just wanted someone else who would be available to treat Ranch, because Sriracha literally will not do medicine. This is the thing. So it gets to that point where you're like, oh, okay, like, if you won't do medicine at all, like, what do we do here? You know, like, I can't treat Ranch, and it's just bringing his mood quite low at times. And you know, we had a few mad animal events. Like, the most notable was this tortoise that for some reason I ran away from for a while, and then I thought about it. I was like, it's a tortoise. What's it gonna do? Like, nip at my heels? So I had Sriracha take it out pretty quickly, which again supplied us with food. We got our first like little crop harvest come in, and you can see here this guy, we tried. All right guys, we tried, but he had a bad back. He had an extreme infection, and our tend just wasn't high enough to treat the infection. So the man did not survive. It did not take long for the infection to just take him out. So yeah, it was all great. The immunity's at like 53, whilst the infection's close to 99. So at this point I probably should have said, like, don't worry about it, Ranch, but it didn't really matter. We had plenty of medicine. You know, one bit wasn't really gonna cause a massive shortage in the settlement. So, but yeah, this is when I kind of found out that we got the gut worms. I knew he was ill in bed a lot, but I was kind of like, what's going on? So we knew that we needed to get someone else in eventually. And as I said, I started first and foremost shrinking the base down ever so slightly and make it more defendable, give us some more kind of open defense space at the front. And as I said, like later on, probably moving into episode 5, you'll see that the walls will start to get replaced, and it meant we had like a huge glut of wood and things like that as well, which are always helpful to have. So we did get to reclaim quite a bit of those resources. Yeah, and we started moving things, really started uninstalling certain bits and pieces, started thinking about moving the workshop. So we moved a lot of the workshop actually. I wanted to leave the kitchen stuff in the main area near where I'd established a fridge. I'll probably move the fridge later on, somewhere defensible and somewhere I know it will stay cool, and we'll go from there. So a little bit later in the playthrough, we had a lynx come to hunt Sriracha. He was clearly the most easy thing to eat out of the herd of muffalo and the wog. So fortunately I should say, I managed to get him away, and the lynx attacked just at the right moment to prevent it from like coming through the door. So they're pretty slow. However, I kind of stood here like a lemon for a while, waiting for it to come through, only to realize it's not technically like part of the mad category, so it's not going to follow you through every single opening. So we got to this point, and this is a pretty big tweak for us. This is quite useful. So we got Gomar join us, and Gomar is great. I'm so happy with Gomar because they've got plants, they've got intellect, and straight away in a couple of days they wanted to join us. So I was like, wicked, you can definitely help us because you can do medicine as well. And all of a sudden things started to come a lot faster. So we had more of the construction being done because ranch was actually being treated now. They're actually working, and I showed this bit because it's a bit of revenge for us. The Wog took out the lynx, so we took on Gomar, but obviously you guys know me, and I decided to call them broccoli. They're not quite a condiment, but I'll take it. So I basically decided this whole room area here, other than the place where they sit, eat, butcher, and obviously dry meat, they would be covered by roof, but everything else, the flooring was getting lifted, the roof was being done, and the plan was to have this essentially as our planting area, and then have obviously the other one that I've reallocated as the workshop. It works well in my head, and you can see where I've taken out the roofs and things like that very quickly, and where I've included roofing. So the idea is that the rice can still grow indoors, and the roofing will still cover a few of these areas. It's a bit of a strange setup, but how I see it in 3D in my head is they're sat out there in like a courtyard, and they've got like little lean-to style kind of like corrugated tin roofing areas that cover their cooking areas, and they're cooking outside, and it's a happy time, they're barbecuing, it's great. As you do. We failed some quests. I don't know what quests they were. There was too much carnage going on at this point. We were finally recovering from what had happened before, and the food was coming in, people weren't starving anymore, everyone had a bed, the buffalo was great. So thanks for tuning in, and I really look forward to seeing you guys next time.